My name is Ethan Caldwell. I'm a 8-year-old communications officer in the United States Army, third generation in a family where service runs deeper than bloodlines. My grandfather served in Vietnam, my father in Desert Storm, and now here I am, boots planted firmly in a world where every signal, every encrypted command has to hit clean or someone, somewhere, pays the price. I don't deal in noise, I deal in clarity. Last week started like any other. I was running diagnostics at the Northern Command Ops Center, sipping stale coffee and watching the hub traffic flash across my screen like clockwork. We were green across all 5 bases, comms tight, response times textbook perfect. That's when Major Benson stormed into the room like he owned the air I was breathing. He didn't knock, didn't pause, just stepped into my space with his face flushed and jaw clenched and said the words that still echo, "Shut it all down." For a second, I thought he was joking. Or maybe misfired a directive meant for another station. But then I saw his eyes. Cold, final, like the kind of stare you give when you've already decided there's no room for questions. I sat up straight, asked him to repeat. He doubled down, full system shutdown. My hands hesitated over the console because the pipeline I was about to kill connected live coordination between multiple combat-ready installations. There were no backups, no mirrors, just one live stream, and I was holding the kill switch. So I did what I've always been trained to do. I followed orders, but not before logging every step. And as I pressed the final key, part of me already knew this wasn't the end of something. It was the start. I followed the order like every good soldier is trained to do. But the moment my fingers keyed in the shutdown sequence, I felt the gravity shift. The system I was about to disable wasn't just routine comms. It was the central operations backbone for 5 active bases handling encrypted routing, synchronized mission timing, emergency escalation protocols. One missed transmission could mean a delayed medevac, a botched supply drop, or worse. I paused long enough to ask for confirmation. Twice. Major Benson didn't flinch. He reached past me and pressed the confirmation key himself. That final keystroke sent a ripple I knew would tear through every connected node from Fort Drake in the south to Hillstone up north. Then he held out his hand like this was a disciplinary walkout and told me to surrender my military ID. I handed it over. No questions. No resistance. I wasn't going to argue with a man who clearly didn't understand the machine he just broke. I stood, logged out clean, locked my terminal, and walked out of the comms room without looking back. But I didn't leave the building. Not really. There's a coffee shop on the lower level, just past the operations wing. I took a seat by the window that gave me a full view of the command corridor. Black coffee, no cream, no sugar, just bitter and hot like the adrenaline building under my skin. I knew the clock had already started ticking. They just didn't know it yet. That system had no failover, no ghost instance. It was live or it was dead, and now it was dead. The missions running through it weren't just paused. They were blind, no alerts, no updates, no response sync. It was like severing the nerves from a body mid-surgery. I sat there, watching, waiting. My pulse was steady, but my mind was running diagnostics from memory. I could picture each comm relay dropping offline, each autoroute stalling, each flag trigger failing to launch. And I wasn't going to step in. Not yet. Not until the ones who ignored the warnings saw exactly what they had unleashed. It didn't take long. Within 5 minutes of the shutdown, the first signals dropped. Base Bravo went dark on the tactical map, followed by 2 more in the next minute. No location tags, no transmission IDs. Just silence where there should have been a steady heartbeat of data. I saw a captain jog down the hall outside the cafe window, headset clutched to his ear, voice sharp with confusion. Inside the control wing, officers began flooding into the main ops floor. Screens blinked red, alerts stacking faster than anyone could acknowledge. You could feel the panic rising, like a fire crawling under steel. A tech sergeant dropped his tablet mid-stride. Another called out for a backup relay. There wasn't one. The silence in the comms was louder than sirens. The first signs of chaos weren't noise. They were the looks. Squared jaws twitching. Glances between ranks that said what no one wanted to admit. Something big had broken. Then came the running. Downstairs, a pair of specialists dashed past the hallway, yelling to hold a call with Fort Monroe. Someone shouted back that Fort Monroe hadn't checked in at all. I watched it unfold from behind the glass. No one noticed me, but I noticed everything. Projectors flickered. Power cycles were reset manually. A senior chief slammed a door. The base's lead strategist barked orders, his tone clipped, like he knew every second lost meant another operation stalled. And just when I thought the floor couldn't get tenser, it did. A black government SUV rolled up outside the main entrance. The rear door opened, and a brigadier general stepped out. No warning, no escort. Just boots hitting concrete and a face set like stone. When he walked through the glass doors, the atmosphere cracked wide open. Conversations stopped. Eyes shifted. Every officer near the entrance snapped to attention. And just like that, the real fallout had begun. Major Benson walked back into the base like he was returning from a casual lunch. His jacket was slung over one shoulder, sunglasses still on, and there was a half-smirk curling at the edge of his mouth. You'd think he'd just wrapped up a briefing, not set off a chain reaction that severed critical military infrastructure. The smugness in his step was so thick you could see it ripple through the hallway air, but he didn't get 10 feet past the checkpoint before the brigadier general intercepted him. No small talk, just a single question that sliced through the room like a blade. Why is the command node offline? Benson blinked, stunned, like he'd been slapped in the face with a fact he couldn't process. He stammered something about testing procedures, miscommunication, temporary resets. The general didn't buy a word. His eyes didn't even flinch. Behind them, senior officers were already pulling up timestamp logs, replaying data requests, pointing at dashboards frozen in red. Benson started to sweat. Literally, you could see the patches forming under his collar. He tried shifting blame, something about network delays and software latency, anything to dodge the direct hit. I watched it all from the lower level, standing just out of view. No need to speak, no need to step in. The truth was already unraveling, loud and clear. He didn't realize what he'd triggered. He thought leadership was about volume and posture. But now, with the system dead and accountability coming for him like a missile, all that bark meant nothing. I took another sip of cold coffee and let the scene play out. Justice doesn't need a mic. Sometimes, it just needs the right people to stop listening to the wrong ones. I drove home without the radio on. No calls, no distractions, just the low hum of the engine and the weight of everything I knew was about to unfold. The house was quiet when I stepped inside. I didn't sit. I didn't eat. I went straight to my home terminal, powered it up, and opened the secure archive. For 6 months, I'd been flagging vulnerabilities. I sent warnings, wrote reports, logged every unpatched breach and every shortcut Benson insisted we take to save time. I wasn't trying to stir trouble. I was doing my job. But he always brushed it off, called it noise, told me to stick to signals and leave the strategy to the big dogs. So I started documenting. Quietly, consistently. Every email thread, every chat log, every skipped update and reckless call tied to his name went into a folder. That night, I opened that folder again and started sorting. I created a new structure, labeled by month, then by topic, then by consequence. I wasn't just building a digital paper trail. I was assembling a case, screenshot by screenshot, timestamp by timestamp. I tagged each file with the specific decision it referenced. If Benson dismissed a risk in a May 12 email, that file got labeled 0512 decision failure. If he overrode a timeline on a June call, the recording clip became 0607 timeline override. It wasn't just organized, it was airtight. Some of the messages were even worse than I remembered. Him joking about skipping patch cycles, telling the team to prioritize optics over integrity. Saying out loud, in print, that we'd fix things if and when they broke. That wasn't leadership, that was gambling with live systems. And people. I didn't rush. I took my time, built folders within folders. cross-linked logs with meeting invites, highlighted Slack threads that showed the chain of decisions leading to this exact moment. When I finished, I zipped the archive. One clean package. Clear, factual, impossible to twist. I named it Command Failure, Benson Proof. I didn't do it out of spite. I didn't hate the man. I just refused to be his scapegoat. That's why I didn't react when he took my badge. That's why I kept quiet at the base. Not because I was scared, but because I knew the system would speak for me, and it was about to say everything he'd tried to bury. They called me in just before 0900, no subject line, no details, just a location. Briefing Room C. When I arrived, the room was already half full. HR sat stiff at the far end with a yellow legal pad. The Brigadier General leaned against the wall, unreadable. Major Benson was seated with his hands folded, trying hard to look composed. He gave me a nod like we were colleagues solving a shared problem. We weren't. HR started with a standard opener, something about understanding the sequence of events. But before she finished her sentence, Benson jumped in, said I misunderstood the urgency, that I acted too fast, that maybe I didn't clearly hear his directive. He said he'd asked for a systems review, not a full shutdown. His voice was smooth, like a man who'd rehearsed every word in the mirror. I let him finish, then I spoke. I asked HR if I could clarify the timeline. They nodded. I opened my folder, took out the printout of the command log. I read the exact line, including the timestamp. 7 Stunden, 42 Minuten, 31 Sekunden, directive received. Verbal, full shutdown, confirmation requested. 7 Stunden, 42 Minuten, 38 Sekunden. Directive repeated by commanding officer. Terminal engaged. Then I looked directly at Benson. I reminded him that I had asked twice for clarification. He gave a vague gesture both times. But the last command was crystal clear. Don't get clever. Shut it down. HR asked if I had supporting documentation. I handed over a USB drive. Inside was the zip archive. Labeled, dated, clean. The general motioned for the logs to be reviewed. The IT officer plugged it in and pulled the directive log on the main screen. The room went quiet. The transcript was displayed in full, verbatim. No one said a word for a few seconds. Then the general asked Benson if he disputed the log. Benson shifted in his seat, said maybe he hadn't understood the system was live, that there was too much going on. That I should have warned him again. I stayed silent. The general didn't. He said the operator asked for confirmation, twice. That leadership meant owning consequences, not sidestepping them. HR took notes the entire time, but I could feel the weight in the room shift. For the first time since this started, I wasn't defending myself. I was stating facts. And facts were finally doing the talking. They called me in just before 0900. No subject line, no details. Just a location. Briefing Room C. When I arrived, the room was already half full. HR sat stiff at the far end with a yellow legal pad. The Brigadier General leaned against the wall, unreadable. Major Benson was seated with his hands folded, trying hard to look composed. He gave me a nod like we were colleagues solving a shared problem. We weren't. HR started with a standard opener, something about understanding the sequence of events. But before she finished her sentence, Benson jumped in, said I misunderstood the urgency, that I acted too fast, that maybe I didn't clearly hear his directive. He said he'd asked for a systems review, not a full shutdown. His voice was smooth, like a man who'd rehearsed every word in the mirror. I let him finish. Then I spoke. I asked HR if I could clarify the timeline. They nodded. I opened my folder, took out the printout of the command log. I read the exact line, including the timestamp. 7 hours, 42 minutes, and 31 seconds. Directive received. Verbal, full shutdown, confirmation requested. 7 hours, 42 minutes, and 38 seconds. Directive repeated by commanding officer, terminal engaged. Then I looked directly at Benson. I reminded him that I had asked twice for clarification, He gave a vague gesture both times. But the last command was crystal clear. Don't get clever, shut it down. HR asked if I had supporting documentation. I handed over a USB drive. Inside was the zip archive, labeled, dated, clean. The general motioned for the logs to be reviewed. The IT officer plugged it in and pulled the directive log on the main screen. The room went quiet. The transcript was displayed in full, verbatim. No one said a word for a few seconds. Then the general asked Benson if he disputed the log. Benson shifted in his seat, said maybe he hadn't understood the system was live, that there was too much going on, that I should have warned him again. I stayed silent. The general didn't. He said the operator asked for confirmation. Twice. That leadership meant owning consequences, not sidestepping them. HR took notes the entire time, but I could feel the weight in the room shift. For the first time since this started, I wasn't defending myself, I was stating facts. And facts were finally doing the talking. Then the brigadier general nodded toward the IT officer, who tapped on his tablet and pulled up a second log. System access records. The screen showed it all. Command node shutdown at 7:42. Request originated from Major Benson's clearance ID. Immediate confirmation followed by session lockout. Time-stamped, digitally verified, unaltered. HR leaned forward. She asked Major Benson if he authorized the action. He opened his mouth, but no words came out. His jaw twitched, eyes darted. He finally muttered something about miscommunication, stress, too many voices. But the room wasn't buying it. No one was. The general kept his tone level. He reminded everyone that the base operates on chain of command and operational clarity. Not guesswork, not improvisation. Then he looked at me, asked if I had anything to add. I said only this. I followed orders. I logged everything. And I never acted outside protocol. It wasn't smug. It wasn't angry. It was just the truth. The general turned to HR. She nodded, clicked her pen once, and marked something on her pad. Benson looked down at his hands, like he was trying to remember how to undo everything with silence. That was the moment it turned, not with shouting, not with fists on the table, but with a log, a file, and the one thing military systems can't argue with: command integrity, or the lack of it. Benson had no more room to pivot, no escape route, no one left to throw the blame at. He sat there, boxed in by his own command, and I just waited for the next move. HR slid the folder across the table without a word. Benson didn't reach for it. He just stared at the bold text stamped across the top. Temporary suspension pending internal review. The general made it official with one sentence. You're relieved of command effective immediately. An investigation team will contact you within 24 hours. Benson gave a small nod, the kind people give when they know it's over before it even begins. No one clapped. No one spoke. The room was silent except for the faint hum of the wall clock. I didn't say a word. There was nothing to celebrate. The general turned to me. You'll oversee system restoration. 72 hours. No shortcuts. I nodded once. Understood. The tension in the room didn't vanish. It just shifted into focus. There were still fires to put out, still systems offline, still people depending on what we did next. This wasn't vindication. It was responsibility, and I was ready for it. As we filed out of the room, the general gave me one last look. No speech, no handshake, just a look that said, get it done, and I would. Because that's what justice looks like in a chain of command. Not noise, not vengeance, just accountability. Then you get back to work. I didn't wait to be told twice. As soon as the meeting ended, I walked straight to the operations room, slid into the console, and got to work. No distractions, no phone, just checklists and protocol. The first step was system assessment. I needed to know exactly what was still intact and what had been corrupted. The encryption chain had to be verified before anything else moved. I coordinated with our team in North Dakota first. They were the farthest node and usually the most stable. Once their node pinged back green, I knew we had a shot. From there, I moved to routing. Every command had to be tested manually. Packet flow, response time, bounce patterns. One misstep and we'd delay the rest of the chain by hours, maybe days. The second hub came online just before midnight, Arizona. Routing table verified, node secure. Next up was the central base in Kentucky. That one had taken the biggest hit during the crash. I worked through the night with 2 engineers on a secured bridge line. No small talk, just code, timestamps, and silent signals of progress. By day 2, we had 3 out of 5. The team in Florida needed a full config rebuild. I walked them through each step, redlining old scripts, reauthoring key rotations, syncing up encryption headers until the whole system recognized itself again. It wasn't fast, but it was clean. No shortcuts, no patches we'd regret later. The 5th and final base, California, was the wild card. Their network had been unstable even before the crash. I knew if this one failed, the whole thing would fall apart again. But we stayed the course. Methodical, precise. On hour 67, the signal came through, green. I sat back in my chair, eyes scanning the final dashboard. Green across all 5 bases. No alarms, no delays, just silence. The kind that tells you the system is holding. There was no applause, no backslaps, just a few tired faces nodding behind glowing screens. And for the first time in 3 days, I let myself exhale. Mission complete. Order restored. And the only thing that mattered now was keeping it that way. When I walked back into the operations center, no one clapped, no one even stood. But every head lifted for a second, and every gaze said the same thing. They knew. I sat at my desk like nothing had happened. Booted up the system, checked the logs, everything held. 2 emails hit my inbox. The first was from the client. Contract retained, continued partnership confirmed. The second was from command. They wanted me to start training regional teams, build resilience, share protocol, prevent the next near miss before it starts. I stared at the screen for a long time. Not because I was surprised, but because I understood what it meant. It meant they saw. It meant the right things still matter. It meant there was still honor in doing the job by the book. I didn't smile. I didn't need to. Quiet wins don't echo. They resonate.